Alrighty, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Electric Underground. I've actually lost track of what episode this is, so we'll just have to read the title for that. But with me today, we got the dual guests. We've got Plasmo, and we've got Charlene. Welcome to the show.
Hey everybody. Hope everyone's doing well.
Hello again. Thanks for having me.
I think Plasmo is the MVP guest now. I think you've been on the most out of everyone. So let's start with, a lot of you will be familiar with Plasmo, but let's just reintroduce everyone. So Plasmo, introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, yeah, probably not much to say. I'm Plasmo. I play Pink Sweets and period. That's it.
And you're also like the certified shmup expert historian, keeper of all shmup knowledge. If you guys have questions about ancient replays, ancient scores.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
The dude can also speak Japanese and translate Japanese, so that's another really, really helpful skill that he has for us. Plasmo's all around. Like, I just think of him as sort of like the shmup historian, shmup professor or something like that. I don't know. I need to find a nice term for you.
Sounds funny.
Something
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
I really just care a lot about the in particular the scoring history. So from the very beginnings, from the 80s up to the present, and of course the very different methods of score keeping over the decades. And incidentally, this will be one of the topics today, right?
Absolutely. And so we also have joining new to the podcast, Charlene. How's it going?
Hey everybody, my name is Charlene. I'm a game developer and fighting game player who's recently turned into a shmup librarian of sorts. I'm the founder and server administrator of the newly opened shmups.wiki, which I sort of describe as a sort of digital library of shooting game information. People can learn about these games, how to play them, the history behind them, and have the information be verified by the players who are actually part of the community.
So I'm remembering back with my first sort of interaction with you was Shmup Slam 2. I remember you contacted me through, I think it was the Shmup Reddit, and
yeah, it was through Reddit.
Yeah, and you're submitting a demonstration. I was pretty impressed. Like, usually, I think everyone else who did demonstrations were sort of like long-time shmup people or fairly long-time shmup people. Were like, they're familiar faces basically, but you were the person I was like, oh, this is a whole new person. So, yeah, it was really cool of you. So I want to know on your side of things, what inspired you to sort of get into shmups, get into Shmup Slam 2? How did that happen?
Honestly, the more that I think about it, I feel like I've actually always really liked shmups, but like I played them a lot when since I'm a fighting game player mostly, I would be playing the fighting games, and when there was no fighting games, I would look for the coolest looking shmup that I could find and just sit in front of it and throw credits at it until I see the end. So I've probably been playing for a while, but I feel like I started getting really invested in the genre around last year, 2019, in March, I think. In between like Tekken matches at our local venue, I would just pop open the multicab. It's like one of those Pandora's box like emulator boxes, and I would just go through the shmups, and I would just like pick shmups, and I'd be like, that looks cool. I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play that. And then I fell into two really big holes. One was DDP, and the other was Mars Matrix. Two games that I still play a lot to this day, and I'm even practicing to get a 1cc in Mars Matrix and maybe DDP sometime this year or next. But yeah, I think it was those two games I played the most, and Giga Wing, which was the game that I used to play back when I lived in Vegas all the time in between Marvel matches. So I think it was around November 2019 that Degica was doing one of their like shmup sales where all their shmups are 60% off. And I saw DFK there for about $12. That's usually like how much it goes on sale for. Because I was like, you know what? I'm playing these games a lot. I may as well grab this while it's cheap. It's like 7 games in one, so there's no way I'm not gonna get at least my
Steam
dollar
port
value
is ridiculous. The amount of stuff on that.
Yeah, Steam port is crazy, and if it goes on sale, anyone who sees it should probably pick it up because that game has a lot. That game has a lot going for it, especially when it's 5 games. But I remember going into the normal mode of 1.5. I think I played like 3 runs before I was like, "Whoa, this is a bit much for my wheelbarrow right now." So then I went into the novice mode, and that's where I was able to like sort of settle into the mechanics and understand like the flow of how the game works. I'm pretty sure that was my first 1cc that I had gotten for DFK 1.5 novice. I think I got that like a month or two afterwards after doing a lot of practice mode. So it felt very satisfying, and getting to that second loop where it stops being novice mode and it starts just being normal DFK, building up to that point and getting that 2-all. I think when I got my first 2-all, I probably popped off harder than any Tekken match I've ever played in my life. So it was like a very satisfying, gratifying feeling. I was like, damn, I feel like a badass right now for beating this game. And then I think around that time I had then started streaming it, and Daring Spino, the DFK guy, DFK Gang Rise Up,
the hidden boss. It just appeared out of nowhere and destroyed DFK for some reason.
Yeah. And I was just like, who is this guy? It's just like some random guy that appeared in like a DFK stream that I was doing. And he was giving me all this advice and stuff. And I was like, whoa, there's like people out here who play these games, and there's like a community. And I'm kind of interested in digging into that a little bit and seeing what's going on here. And I think that's what led me to, I think it was the farm that I went to first. And it was just like threads of people having discussions about games and mechanics and helping each other figure out games and comparing scores. And I was like, okay, this makes me feel like we're back in the arcade days, but it's like people are doing it online. So I thought it was really interesting. And then from that point on, I just kind of decided, you know what? This is cool. This genre is cool. These people are cool. I'm just going to hop right in and just like see if I can blend in with the crowd and hang out and talk about shmups. So that's pretty much my history of shmups over the course of the last year or so that I've been playing.
One part of your story that I must ask a follow-up question on is when you were saying you were playing in the Pandora's box. This will amuse Plasmo. So my local arcade ended up getting a Pandora's box not too long ago, and they had some shmups on there like 1945, Strikers 1945, and I think the second one as well. But when I went to play them, they were stretched out in 16:9 horizontal. So it was like, what the is going on here?
I did not encounter that one in my Pandora's box exploration. I think we got a good one.
Oh, okay.
It's on like an actual CRT and everything too, so it actually feels pretty nice, even though it's emulation.
Oh, mine was so awful. The lag was crazy. It's like those really bad, really cheap American sticks, not even good ones.
Oh yeah, the hats.
Yeah, and then it has like the Tekken button layout, and if you're not familiar with this, at least the American Tekken button layout, where there's 4 buttons, but they're miles apart from each other. So like you have to use your thumb and your pinky to get at them or something. So
yeah. you have to stretch those limbs. That's for sure.
And there's no auto fire. 16:9 stretched horizontally. It was the worst shmup experience I've ever had.
That's the true way to play shmups.
And of course, it's a Psycho game, so the lag is not.
Oh boy!
It was hilarious though. It was actually really funny because since it was so stretched out, the bullets were like hella slow, but your ship could like barely move out of the way in time because the stretching it was really bizarre. So.
Oh man. For
a minute there, I was like, oh my gosh, if that's your introduction to shmups, Medal of Honor for continuing to play.
Luckily, it was a pretty good one, and it had like a very diverse selection. That was also the first time that I had played Battle Back Raid, which I had gotten really sucked into for like about 3 weeks. I was just like, oh man, this is the coolest game right now. Which I've noticed the more I get into this genre, the more that happens to me, where it's like every 2 weeks, I'm like, this is the coolest game now, and this is the coolest game now. All of these games are cool. How do you not play all of them? So I'm just playing all of them and learning about them. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like I wish I was a little bit better about that, especially when we did Calice Cup and those types of things where I'm not really good at picking up new games, and I'm kind of like a stubborn person. I remember in Calice Cup, the first one, Dodonpachi was in it. I spent like almost the entire time playing Dodonpachi. Then last 3 days, I'm like, crap, I gotta play these other games. So, like, I'm really bad about that. I'll start playing something else, and then I'll think to myself, okay, I kind of want to play Dodonpachi now, or kind of cave games, basically. Though Battle Gariga slipped through. Like, Battle Gariga is one that I can sit and play a lot.
Battle Garega is like this. It's like the almost chosen one. Like if it wasn't Ikaruga, it would have been Battle Garega.
Yeah, exactly. It's like almost there. So anyway, let's get on to the topic at hand, because this is actually a really exciting announcement, because this is something that has been discussed, at least for as long as I've been around, which is the Shmup Wiki. And the reason why I have both Charlene and Plasmo on here is because both of them have been going hard in the paint on putting this together. Plasmo basically was putting in 15-hour shifts or something crazy like that. What were you saying you were doing, Plas? You were putting in some crazy hours. I know that.
Yeah, I put some hours into it, but I don't think I've even done like a fragment of what Charlene has done for the wiki. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to compare when I
Yeah.
run it, but I would say that you've probably done like a good 30% of the work, I think, has involved you in some way.
maybe.
First, want to, I guess, go over sort of the history prior to you making this wiki, Charlene, because I remember over the past 2 years of being around, this is something people have discussed quite a bit, at least with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people message me like, hey, you should make a Shmup Wiki. I'm like, yeah, I should. That's where it ended, because I'm like,
That seems to be a problem in the scene sometimes.
because it's like I'm doing a bajillion things, the index, the website, the podcast, the YouTube.
Yeah, you're
I'm
honestly killing it out here with all the stuff you're cranking out for Shmups.
So I was like, yeah, I should, but I don't think I can. But I also, Plasma, I was wanting you to kind of give people a sort of overview of what it was like, what it has been like trying to find information about Shmups, because for me it's been a little bit frustrating at times where
Yeah.
like the farm has some thread about it somewhere on it, but finding them is usually really difficult.
Yeah, so it's definitely not been easy over the years. I mean, when was the farm opened? I think it was 2005. At least the version we've got today, right?
Uh-huh.
And before that, there was a different Shmups forum already. And basically, the strategy sub-forum of the Shmups forum would be the go-to place when it comes to strategy. And you have this thread strategy board index at the very top. So if you click on it, you have all the different threads ordered in alphabetical order. But the problem is that it's not updated, I think, at least after a certain point. So most of the stuff you will find there, and it looks really good. Still, of course, it's like cluttered as hell because everything has a different entry there, and it's not nice to navigate through, right?
Absolutely not.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's at least the overview of the strategy guides or questions people had over the years. And then when you find the more in-depth strategy guides for the respective games, the problem you encounter is that these strategy guides are only maintained by one single person.
Yeah.
And if that one single person happens to be very knowledgeable and cares about the topic and updates it a lot, then it's a good strategy guide. This rarely happens. There are some really good strategy guides, and they still hold up to today's standards, definitely. So particularly noteworthy are Icarus guides for Battle Garaga, of course, is probably one of the best of the forums, but also a couple of other ones. So lots of knowledge in there for sure. But other strategy guides are, well, not so good, I would say. Not naming anything in particular, but maybe the name of Randorama should be brought up at least here. Sometimes they are, well, not that helpful. And lots of the things he was writing are not really. He's writing about a game, but he's also inventing his own stuff. So the Darius Gaiden, the Grey Orbs in Darius Gaiden, he tells you specifically how to get the max bonus of 51,200. You have to collect it at, I think so it does this circle motion, and when it's at 12 o'clock, it gives this max bonus. But this is actually not the case. It's completely random. And we've looked into the code by now, and it is random. So he's made up some stuff. But we also don't have to forget that this was basically 15 years ago. And of course, he could have done a better job, and other people as well. It's not like just him. But they could have done a better job back then, but it was just a different time. and a different mindset. And I think over the years, people have gotten much more serious with these games, not only shmups, but also speed ones and everything. So competitive gaming, single-player gaming is now taken much more seriously, which is a good thing. And I think it's basically time to move on. And the wiki format gives us everything we need to look into a better future of strategy and knowledge sharing, I think.
Yeah, well, my main issue with the farm, outside of farm drama and stuff, my main issue has been that the way that site is built is just so old and so antiquated that there are simply a lot of features that cannot be done on that site, you know? And I'll talk a little bit more about the leaderboard, because that was what I was mostly focusing on. But I could also see that with strategy and stuff where, let's say you get an expert player looking at that Darius Gaiden run or that strategy entry and everything, and he's like, no, that's incorrect. But whatever, the dude who wrote that post is off who knows where, you know, abandoned it, and you try and contact a mods and like, mod, I've got a bunch of other crap to do. And then there's really no way to sort of get in there and fix it, right? But on the wiki, you could. And so I think that's just going to be a really useful thing moving forward as far as being able to access mistakes or add, you know, information much more quickly. Because putting this all on one person to run things, I think the farm has shown what effects that has, where it ends up, they have those sort of bursts of activity, and then years can go by where nothing gets done because people move on with their lives and we don't know how to address the thread as it is and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the problem with running this sort of thing on a forum, right? Is that forum software just isn't built for collaborative efforts. Because it's like, whenever you post something, it's a post that you posted and no one else is allowed to touch that, no matter what, under any circumstances. Even if you've decided that you don't even want to be on the forum anymore and you decide to go do your own thing, become like a pro League of Legends player or whatever, and then your thread just gets left in the dust. And you can even see it in the farm where there's several high score threads for some games because people make a new thread because they can't update the old thread. And like Garega has like 8 or something like that. It's crazy. And it's like whenever you try to search for high scores, you have to go through the deduction of how forum software works, you have to figure out which one actually has all of the recent scores. And it might still even be outdated because the thread still hasn't been updated with the post from 5 days ago or whatever. So it's like, yeah, it does not work in the long term, which is kind of like a big inspiration of why I started the wiki in the first place, is because that way anyone can contribute. So the information, if there's wrong information or if there's missing information, someone can swing by and be like, oh, I know that. And then they just throw it in there.
Right, exactly. And plus, just the interface to me looks a lot better than like on the farm and stuff, where you could put like little pictures of hitboxes in there. And you could even add art, like, you know, the game's art or something in there if you wanted. And it just also seems like it's much more, you can speak to this probably more than I can, Charlene, because I don't actually work on the wiki at this point as far as how it's set up, but newer stuff, it's much easier, like on my website, to move the web information around. Like if I wanted to export my pages onto someone else's website, I could. Whereas on the farm, getting that information off that is a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, you have to like copy paste the whole post, and then you also have to copy paste the formatting.
Right.
If you can
and
even
sometimes
do
you
it,
can't.
depending on where you paste.
with the wiki, I'm assuming that it is much more easy to move that information around and stuff like that. So if people, for instance, are working on something themselves and they want to just drop it onto the wiki, they'll be able to do that?
I guess it really depends on what kind of info they have. Because I know SMC had a Fireshark guide, or Same, and he had sent me like a text file of all that stuff. And then I just dumped that like raw onto the wiki. And then later on, he went through and reorganized it and put it into like closer to the format that we're using. Really, when it comes down to it, the information can kind of come from whatever way that it does, and it can very easily be translated into like a wiki page.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. That sounds like a little simple thing, but it's actually way more important than you realize, especially when you're amassing giant piles of information.
Yeah, we learned that early on within like the first month or two of the wiki being open, where some pages were formatted like completely differently than others. So it looked a little slapshot and like a little disorganized. So it wasn't really sure. We weren't like, no, it was hard to see what the purpose behind all of it was when a lot of it felt very scattershot. So we just got together and like cooperatively as a community came up with a sort of guideline or like a template that could be easily copy and pasted into other pages. So now every time there's a new page, it's already in the proper formatting. It already looks like it lines up with all the other pages. And then it's mostly just filling in missing information, throw in like a title screen and like a logo and stuff like that. And you're pretty much good to go.
So right now, I know you're in the really early stages, and so it's hard to really look too far ahead, but what are kind of your more near future goals, or what are you kind of going for with the wiki? I guess the overall goal of this, I mean, of course it is to collect information, but what makes it, what separates it from like the farm or other sources of information out there?
For me personally, I want it to act as like a massive compendium of shmup information. Like maybe at some point in the next couple years, all the pages that are there that have like game pages, you'll be able to look at them and you'll be able to see what it's about. You'll be able to see how the mechanics work. You'll be able to get an idea of how to play the game. You might even know some history behind the game's development or like behind the developers themselves. You might see like some cool like shots of like campaign stuff, like cool pictures and stuff like that. And you can find like strategy guides and stuff like that as well. So that way people could go into these games and not be playing completely blind. They could get an idea of how the game or like how the developers envisioned the game being played and how higher level people might play the game, and like basically give people access to all of the information about the game, like as much that can be possibly found. And honestly, with some pages, like I think the Ketsui page is a great example of how we've just like dug into the game's code at this point and dissected information about, like when we revealed the way the hitboxes worked in that game, where it's just like the bullets aren't even a pixel, they're just like a 2D point in the center of the sprite, basically. And that got found by Olafante, who joined the community recently and has been doing a lot of decompiling stuff and like reverse engineering stuff so that we can actually dig deep into these games and figure out how they work from like a deep code level and really understand, so that way people can play these games like to their maximum and kind of really understand what the developers were going for.
Yeah, I'm just imagining now. Imagine you're picking up a new shmup and you can just go to the wiki page and see what the hitbox looks like. Because that's always like a fun, frustrating process. I say fun sarcastically, of when you pick up, for instance, I still do not know between Dodonpachi, DOJ, White Label and Black Label, which one has the bigger hitbox and which one doesn't for the ship types. Because I always hear like conflicting, I'm sure Plasmo actually knows, but like B type in White Label has a smaller one or a bigger one based on if it's Black Label or White Label, and A type, Plasmo, I'm sure you know.
I always mix them up.
Yes, right. So if we had the page on the wiki that just told you, we wouldn't have to do this all the time, because I'm seriously thinking whenever I go to pick my ship in White Label or Black Label, like, okay, which one has the smaller hitbox, which one doesn't?
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you don't know.
And people say different things about it also, so there's like misinformation that gets spread around and like touted as facts.
Oh,
which is also like a big thing that I want to tackle with the wiki is like all the misinformation that's out there, just like getting it cut out. So it's just like, here is what is here. If it is here, it is here. If it is not here, then it's not real.
Like, Plaz can talk about this. Like, so I've used their site a few times for shmups because they usually have
Hardcore Gaming 101.
Yeah, sorry, Hardcore Gaming 101, where they have a decent amount usually on like the background and the development, but a lot of their gameplay information is just straight up wrong. Check the Dodonpachi one.
Yeah, which is funny because I feel like for those pages, like the Dodonpachi, the DOJ, the DFK pages, I feel like they probably just went to the farm and probably stumbled on like random Rama or whatever his name is pages and was just like, oh, it's on the farm, so it must be real. So then they just throw it in there, and then now everyone thinks that's how the game works, and it's not.
So I have the feeling with Hardcore Gaming 101 that they are not doing any original research or playing the games themselves, which is fine, but they still want to include gameplay elements into their reviews or overviews of the game. So they have to go to other sites, and of course they would use the Shmups forum, and sometimes it's very clear that they were using those strategy guides found there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's hit or miss. If the game has a good strategy guide over there, then the Hardcore Gaming article is also better. And if it's a bad one, then it's worse. And they cannot really decide themselves because they're not double checking the information. They just copy paste. And I'm not sure if they're using also other sites probably. And so it's a very, very unbalanced type of context, which we definitely want to avoid with the wiki. And we are successfully avoiding it by like asking players double, triple checking the information, and it's looking really good right now.
Right, like peer review, right? Where basically...
Yeah, basically like this, yeah.
For instance, I could sit down and make a Futari page and do my best, but I guarantee you SMC and Gus are going to be like, no, this isn't right. You know, they'll have the correct information that they'll put in there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, arguably, that's what happened with the DDP page, is that Plasmo was like, some of this doesn't look right. And then he fixed it up and made it look nice and clean and correct. So the page is really nice.
So for many of the pages, my job was basically just to complain about things, and this is wrong, this is wrong, this is half right. And then other people correct it. But I mean that's how it works, I guess. It's just a constant work in progress, and of course I'm not a DDP expert at all. There are people who have like tons of more knowledge of Dodonpachi in particular, so they will correct me again, and so it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very reminiscent of working on the video index, where, especially early on, where I just vomit information onto the pages and then like hand them off to Plaz, like, Plaz, check this shit, make sure it's right. Yeah, definitely a useful function, absolutely. Otherwise, you start falling into hardcore gaming 101 territory, basically, if you don't have that oversight.
Imagine spending years grinding a game thinking that if you do X or Y, you'll be getting 25% more meter, and you just don't notice for like years that that's not actually true because that's what you read on the internet.
I don't have to imagine. I've done it. I've done that many times.
See, there you go. You have experience.
Yes, I have done this a few times with various games. One of them, when I was a kid, Super Mario RPG, I read some bullshit game facts.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
game facts, whatever they are, guide, so to say, about how you could unlock Luigi in the game if you did this or that. And of course the requirements were freaking ridiculous. And I spent and I was so... Oh, yeah, I've had that. And also in Dodonpachi, I actually kind of ran into this where, surprisingly, Dodonpachi does not really have, well, with the wiki it's changed, but before then it didn't really have a solid fundamental guide on like the basic systems and stuff. And so for the 2 years I've played it up until earlier this year, I thought that if you bombed, you lost your max bonus completely. It turns out, if you bomb, you lose your max bonus, but if you stay alive and collect a bomb again, your max bonus returns -1. So that makes a huge difference in the second loop, had I known that. So, you know, again, just small stuff like that. If you don't know it can greatly... it can greatly impact how you route stuff, like risk rewards and all that sort of stuff, so...
Yeah. I have the feeling that particularly shmups they have a bad time explaining themselves to the players. They often feature many esoteric, untold things. I mean, it starts
Yes.
with hitboxes you usually don't see. And all the scoring systems are basically invisible, right? So you have to read about them somewhere, or people in the arcade tell you how it works, how top level play looks like. You can watch a replay, of course, but if it's like some sort of world record replay, you will not understand much of it without further.
Probably won't be commentary or anything like that either, unless it's had like an STG weekly episode or something like that. And if you're like new to the genre, you might not even immediately know what that is, you know?
Oh yeah, I've run into this with Dan 3, where I was like the only player really in the game for a while there, and I had, other videos to go off of, but they didn't really have much higher scoring potentials than myself, and now there's this mysterious massive Pazzi score that I have to reverse engineer to try and figure out how he got the scoring. And I also think, yeah, that can come up. Another one is also like small little things that you wouldn't realize. Like, imagine when I was playing Mushi for the first time, I had no idea about this whole super shot, auto fire rate crap and all that. And so,
yeah, the deep tech.
You know what? There's so much random tech in shmups that I think like the wiki is an essential part of playing these games, because otherwise you're going to have poor people playing these games for who knows how long, and they're missing out on like some fundamental stuff like super shot and Mushi or something like that.
And not everyone is going to have some super ultra brain genius who can reverse engineer games to figure out how things actually work in their Discord server. You know, that's like kind of a rare creature that you don't really stumble upon. So you can't account for something like that existing.
Yeah, hi SMC.
Yeah, hi SMC and Olafante.
Yeah, I know. I gotta turn them towards Dononpachi if I can. Figure out the slowdown on Hibachi. What's going on there? Figure that shit out.
Shmups Wiki will be the first place to have information on how the slowdown actually works in DDP.
Oh, that would be really cool to find out. So, any other thoughts about the Shmup Wiki? As I understand it, is launching pretty soon, and kind of explain what the launch is going to look like.
August 1st is kind of like our little soft, like, launching release date where we're going to have, like, all the pages be nice and clean. Like, as many pages as possible are going to be, like, as clean and nice looking as possible. I want to be able to put together at least somewhat of a page for all of the companies that we are featuring on the front page right now. And then, of course, those will grow over time as more people check it out and want to write about their favorite shmup company who made this super obscure game that no one played. And then just kind of like actually start promoting it and like sharing it to people. And when people are like looking for tech, if we have a page for it, we just send them the page and be like, check this out. This is exactly what you're looking for. It's not going to be like anything super crazy fancy, but it is kind of exciting to be able to say, hey guys, I'm launching this new Shmup Wiki that has 40 great pages of information on it already. And if you wanted to, you could also get involved in it, which is something, well, for me personally, I didn't think that many people were actually getting involved when I made it, just because the discussions surrounding it seemed very cyclical. It was like someone would be like, all this farm stuff is just not working out. We need like a new way to do it. And then like I or someone else would be like, hey, you should make a wiki. And then a bunch of people would be like, that's a great idea. And then like one or two people would be like, that's never going to happen. No one's going to do it. No one wants to do the work. And then at some point I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do the work. So shut up. And then like from there on, like I like did my first launch by just posting it in the STG Rev Discord after doing like maybe like 4 or 5 pages. And I was like, hey guys, I started doing this thing. Check it out. Let me know what you think. And then people just kind of started adding to it and like really growing it in a way that I didn't really initially expect was going to happen, just because it seemed like there was so much resistance towards the idea of the amount of work that it would take that it seemed like no one wanted to be the first one to do it. So I figured I would just take that opportunity. It's like, hey, if I'm going to be hanging out in this community, I may as well contribute something to it. So that was pretty much my way of giving back to the community who helped me learn about these games more and talk about them and give me like an avenue to enjoy them, because this is probably the genre of game that I play the most now, actually.
Yeah, I think maybe shmups are starting to learn this lesson, maybe, because that cycle is so familiar to me. You have no freaking idea. Like, that's my entire shmupping career. Is I show up, I say, "Hey, we should do this." Everyone says, "No freaking way is that ever happening in a million damn years, Mark. You naive idiot. That's not gonna happen." And then I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna do it anyway." And then we start doing it. I mean, there's so many examples of this. The biggest one, though, that I think people needs to shut people's mouths was the glitch bounty. I mean, we pulled that shit off at this point, and then we got into AGDQ, and now we have an AGDQ block. Just last year, I remember very distinctly in my Discord and in other Shmup Discords talking about being in GDQ. This is before Gus was there. And everyone's like, "No freaking way is that happening. No, that's a pipe dream." Then Gus gets in and everyone's like, "Well, it's not. No one's going to care. He's going to be at one."
I remember the farm threads. Yeah, I was around for
that. He'll be playing in Saskatchewan time that no one will watch and all this stuff. And it turns out to be this huge thing. And now we have a Shmup block in this coming one. So, yeah, the Shmup Wiki, again, another lesson that shows where if you actually take some initiative and do something, you are able to do things in Shmups. It is possible. It's not an impossibility. So,
yeah, man. I mean, if anything, like, your channel's a great example. You just like have all these great tip videos and like in-depth breakdowns of like different games and like the history behind them and stuff like that. And people are still giving you money to your Patreon so you can keep doing it. So it definitely seems like the demand for these things is there, and it's just finding the person who will step up and be the one to do it.
It feels like we're sort of moving in a new direction, but it's hard for me to really tell because I live in my own little cyclone of activities, so it's hard for me to know what's going on outside my own brain, basically, these days. But I do feel like we are kind of moving into a more positive direction as far as...
Yeah.
What do you think, Plas?
I agree.
You probably have a more objective outlook than I do.
I agree on that. I think in the Shmups community, it seems like people are being like overly pessimistic all the time over several years, and especially the people who are in the community for longer. I mean, they feel like they have seen it all and nothing is happening, and Shmups were unpopular in 2005 and they're still unpopular in 2020. But all things considered, I think we're moving forward and definitely have grown a lot, and many new faces are appearing day by day. And yeah, I mean, with your podcast, with the new leaderboards, with the wiki and everything, there are so many new projects on the horizon. Definitely think this is going to be a paradigm change for sure.
Yeah, and there's Calice Cup too.
Yeah.
That's still going.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be the next episode of the podcast. You got to trap Dent in my clutches and get him to talk about Calice Cup.
Everyone should enter Calice Cup and check out a bunch of cool games, because it's Shmups all day, and there's even free games. And it's on August 1st, same time that we're launching shmups.wiki. So it could be a good celebration of Shmups on August 1st.
Yeah.
August 1st is insane.
Yeah, speaking of August 1st.
It's happening on this one day. Apart from the strategy guides we find on the wiki, which are definitely the core part for me, and I think for most of the people who are using the wiki, NTSCJ and me have also compiled a list of all world record scores for arcade shooting games at this point, and we've built up this list, of course, with a list you might be familiar. On the Shmups forum, you have the STG Hall of Records, and from when to when was it maintained? So NTSCJ started this one, I think it was in 2007 or something. So over 10 years, he listed all the world record scores over there. And it's been very difficult to, like, answer even the simplest question of what is the world record in this shooting game. It sounds so trivial, and for people from the Speed1 community, they just go to speed1.com and they have all the world records. But in the Shmups community, it's very difficult to find these scores, and they sometimes reach back to the 80s, to the 90s, and of course to Japanese magazines and stuff like that. So it's not that easy. We have a great legacy, a great history of scores, but it's scattered all over the place. And within this new SDG Hall of Records, within the Shmup Wiki, we try to give this final overview, so to say, of arcade scores as of now. At least we can expand this as well.
Plasmo, you're missing out on the obvious way to do this, the easy way that I've always done, which is you just ask Plasmo what the world records are, and he'll let you know what it is. Like, it's not that hard. You just, send him a message, what's the world record score in this, and he'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, fill up his inbox with lots of messages about the world record scores. I'm sure he would love that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we now have this centralized place where just anyone can go to, and they don't have to join the Discord before, and it's also updated regularly. So this is one of my projects on the wiki besides the strategy guides. So I'm not sure just how it fits into the wiki as a whole, because usually we have these pages structured after the developers and the different games, and then we have this Hall of Records, which is kind of a little bit of a different kind of beast, I would say.
It is, but it's also basically the best part of the farm, and now it's on the wiki, right? And so
yeah, it was one of the last remaining topics that had some sort of relevance to it. I mean, the highest scoring replays available topic is still there, and this is, I think, the last few very relevant topics on the farm, at least for scoring-oriented players of shooting games, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's amazing information to have on the wiki that adds a lot of value to it, because, like you said, we've had these discussions all the time. Like, pinning down world records in shmups is not as simple as you all would think, because basically it's this game of chicken where you think you have the world record and you're like, okay, I have the world record, and then of course someone's like, what are you doing? This is the world record. It's somewhere that you didn't know it was, and then you look like an idiot. Not saying that's ever happened to me, but, so pinning down world record scores in these games is not easy, like Plasmo was saying, because it's not centralized in one spot.
Yeah, and now it is, hopefully.
Yeah, and a lot of your information comes from JHA as well, right?
Yeah, so the basis and the basic categories we're scoring in and stuff all go back to JHA, basically. But for the Hall of Records, I also include some new categories. So a very fine-grained category scheme for armed police bed rider, for example, where JHA basically only has one single category. And as you know, there are like 20 characters in the game.
Really?
And
I did not know that.
Potentially a lot of different categories you could go for, right? So I'm trying to use JHA and the Japanese scorekeeping tradition as a basis, just very generally speaking, but then also diverge from it and build up on it using new categories, and also trying to search for scores for golden era games. So usually games older than 1985 are not kept track in Japan at all, and I try to include those too. So sometimes you have even Twin Galaxy scores that are relevant. Particularly noteworthy would be the Gallagher scores.
Right, yeah.
So you actually find world records on Twin Galaxy in this, for this case at least. Usually not the best place for shmups, but for Gallagher, yeah.
Yeah, don't go to their Donanpachi page. As talented as Pearl is, I don't think he holds the world record in Donanpachi.
You guys might be wondering, what is the secret announcement? Could it be Sadai Ojo and MAME? Could it be DDP Blue Label? Could it be Pink Sweets?
Bermuda Triangle.
Yes, it's the Bermuda Triangle. Ooh. We're playing the Japanese version because it's harder. I'll do what I can to explain the game. We're playing with Autofire. This is a 2-button game with analog spinner. You can turn your little cannon with it. It's pretty cool. There are options to have multiple different formations. This is a surprise, dude. What do you mean it's not a surprise? This is Cave's new game. Yes, it is. Alright, these guys are cool. Kill them and they cancel every enemy on screen. Even the mines. Pretty helpful.
Twin Galaxies definitely makes sense for, well, as I said, golden era, or so to say, the so-called golden era games before 1985. Then Twin Galaxies is good, but anything past 1985, Twin Galaxies is not that good, I would say.
You know what I really hope will happen is that, this is my hope for what will happen, is this becomes so popular and centralized that Japanese players start to use it. And so then you start spinning some wheels in some Japanese players' heads like, oh, CS and CL in Donpachi, the ships are now in different types. I want the world record in CL or the world record in AS. And we start to see these scores that we wouldn't have seen otherwise because of the JHA way of doing things.
Fairness that they would definitely agree. I mean, any Donpachi player in Japan would agree that they want to have separate categories for shot and laser types. But the thing is that JHA sets the official categories and the players really can't decide. They have no influence on JHA. So on the one hand, you have this scorekeeping association of JHA, and on the other hand, you have the players. And sometimes the players don't really care about JHA and just play in their own category. But these scores, no one keeps track of them. So you find random score picks on Twitter from 2011 or something with a very good score in a category that basically does not exist officially. And it's not a very desirable situation, in my opinion.
Exactly. That's why it would be really cool if these Japanese players, or more Japanese players, started to recognize this particular page and be like, okay, here's my AS score, or whatever it is. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it seems like some of them actually are like paying attention to what we're doing over here. I know QSD helped me out a lot with the DFK Arrange B page. He gave me like a lot of his research in order to build the page, and he even like reviewed it and went over it and made sure that all the information was correct, which I thought was like a huge honor to me personally, since he's like a super player for that mode and that game in general, really. But he's like the stage 3 counter stop in Arrange B, and I'm like kind of on the side researching doing a counter stop for stage 5 in Arrange B at some point. But a lot of the information that he gave me has been like really useful, and it's helped me verify exactly how that mode works, which I feel like the wiki is the only place that you can go to actually figure out how DFK Arrange B works. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's definitely the case. So you have the few replays by QSD, which are absolutely amazing, and then you have this great strategy guide. And I can tell you that even in Japanese, you will not find any strategy guide for this mode. So even Japanese players don't know how this works, and they have to reverse engineer the top replays.
Yeah.
So yeah, the wiki is definitely not the go-to place only for the English-speaking community, but potentially also for Japanese players if they go through the strategy pages with a translator at least. So it will be difficult. Maybe the SDG Hall of Records will be easier to digest for them.
Right.
But yeah.
I'm not sure, because what's interesting, Plaz, is there is a Japanese wiki, right? And so you being the person who can actually read that, do you want to kind of give your thoughts on that?
Yeah. There are a couple of different Japanese Shmup wikis, actually, and some are really good. I would say much better than the forum topics. But they don't have all the games on there, and some are very underrepresented, and some strategy guides are very good. It basically depends on the players, again, who have written those guides.
Oh, so it doesn't sound like it's super centralized then. Is it like a bunch of different wikis with some information here and there? Or is there one kind of like massive wiki with a lot of information on it?
Yeah, the latter, basically. So you have a lot of smaller things, smaller guides on separate websites and other smaller wikis, but you also have this one big wiki they are using. And it's really good, and I think it will take some time to reach their standards, but definitely not impossible, and it's definitely not the perfect wiki we can just translate from Japanese to English and have everything. So we can and should improve on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, any other thoughts on the wiki before we talk about the leaderboard?
Yeah, I feel like I've talked about everything that I want to say. Check out the Shippu Maho Daisakusen page, because that page is beautiful. They have been putting in work on that page, and it looks amazing. And I feel like it deserves some special attention, because that's also a very unique game that I feel like a lot of people don't know how to play. And now the people who've been working on it are like digging in how to play at like a deep level. And it's probably one of the only places that you could find really good information on that game. So check it out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so this game in particular, when you check out the Japanese wiki, you will find a very poor strategy guide. And the person behind the English wiki page is Echo, who is also the world record holder for Miyamoto. And he has also very high score with Honest John, and probably with the other characters as well. So he definitely knows his stuff, and also knows how to handle the wiki format, and it just looks beautiful and has the best information you can find anywhere on the net,
Holy
even
crap.
in English. It's really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy good. I think I remember like one morning I had just woken up at like 4 a.m. and they were like, we got an update to this page. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? It was very validating for me as the person who runs the wiki to like just see like the community come together, especially like Akko did like so much work to get it looking the way that it does. And it is like, it's crazy. It's probably one of the best like shmup pages out there, like period. Not even considering the wiki or like the farm, just period. It's crazy.
Well, that's awesome. I definitely gotta check that out then.
And I love that he's going for this obscure game, so to say, because I mean you can find information on Dodonpachi and Battle Garaga or Ikaruga. You can find those anywhere. But on Shippu Maho Daisakusen you will not find anything.
Yeah.
And now we got this super detailed guide on this obscure game no one plays. And hopefully this will change, because it's a really good game and now people know theoretically how to play it. So give it a go. It's a good game. Funny mix of racing and shooting, and it's fun, definitely.
Yeah, and that's been like another fun thing too. Every time there's like a beautiful new wiki page, I just go check out the game like immediately, because I'm like, oh, I know how all this works now, so I'm just gonna try this game out and see what it's like. And then I'm like, wow, this game is tight.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, awesome. So we'll go from that to talking about another project that I've been working on mostly, that I plan to launch on the same day, August 1st. So August 1st is National Shmup Day, I suppose. And so this is something that has been an extremely long time in the making, which is a centralized, or hopefully centralized, leaderboard. That's the goal for shmup players all around the world, within the Western scene, but also if people want to submit from other places in the world, like Japan or Korea, China, and basically anywhere. That's the idea. That's why it's called the Open Shmup Leaderboard. And this has history going back to 2 years ago, where I wrote this mammoth post on the farm. I spent a good solid few days putting this post together, putting like PDFs and all this stuff together, basically trying to convince the farm to update the way it runs its leaderboards, you know, having videos for one, also just improving the format, improving the way the games are reviewed and all that sort of stuff. And I got a massive backlash at the time. Everyone's like, no, this is impossible. It can't be done. And there's also a lot of resistance towards the idea of using video standards when it comes to like score submissions and stuff like that. But I think over the past few years, I'm hoping more people have started to realize how important this is, not only for verifying cheating and stuff like that, but also just to help people understand the games better, to learn the games faster, have more enticing way to bring people in, because I think that's something that speedrunning does really well, where a lot of people discover speedrunning through videos, right? Not through times on a screen. They're like, oh, Mario in 5 minutes. Okay, I'm set to go. No, they want to see what that looks like. And so
Yeah, they want to see you like get the weird item in Ocarina of Time and then bomb skip your way across the map and then end up in a warp that takes you to the last boss.
Right, exactly. And the hard part with shmups, especially in the past, was all the leaderboards were just text, and that was it. And I know Prometheus, I talked to him about this, that he was pretty frustrated by this, especially where we had situations, and of course now, famously, right, with Pericles, yeah. So with like Pericles and stuff like that, I think we're starting to realize that shmups aren't all sunshine and rainbows, and people do actually cheat in these games. And so that was one reason why I wanted to do the leaderboard, but also because talking with other players and super players and stuff like that, there just is a real low motivation for people to submit their scores. A lot of people feel like it's kind of pointless. And so you'll sometimes see people achieve great scores and they don't even bother to post them, especially with how poorly run the farm is and everything like that. So that's been the idea of the leaderboard, where it's going to have a requirement for video of your runs. We have a sort of lower end thing, right, Plasmo, where you're kind of like a beginner and it's not a really high score. It might not require a video, but the higher scores do require video. And then also another thing we want to do with this leaderboard is to make it to where it's much easier to submit, because again, with like the farm and stuff, if the dude running the page goes on vacation for 3 months, your score is not getting updated for 3 months. Or if you have beef,
maybe even longer, he might miss it entirely.
Yeah, he might miss it. Or if you're beefing with him, it might cause some issues with getting your scores put up there. And so I really wanted to make this a much more smooth process, and I think I have been able to do that, where you can go in and you can put in your information on that, and then it comes through, and then the mods can look at it and then put it on there in a much quicker fashion than having one person puppy guarding one page. And so if that person disappears, that page is like locked down. The big challenge with the leaderboard is going to be the initial stage here, where whenever you're opening something like this, it needs to build up some credibility. In order to build up credibility, it needs people to submit stuff. But usually people don't submit stuff unless they feel like there's credibility. So there's like this sort of a tough cycle to get it started. So I'm really hoping that if I continue to promote this, continue to talk about it, especially since it's really meeting a demand that we have. Because part of this history that I didn't go into, I should have, is that so after the farm basically said, no, screw you, we're not doing this, I started to look around for alternatives, right? And I came across a few. One of them that I was hoping could pan out was speedrun.com itself. I was hoping, I kind of contacted them, hey, what about adding scoring sections and stuff like that to these games? Because Dodonpachi has a speedrunning page, which is pretty funny, but no, they rejected the idea, so that didn't work out. And so then I looked around at maybe using the French forum, because I do like the way they kind of do things, but the issue with the French forum, I think Plasmo noticed this as well, is they don't differentiate ship types and stuff like that. So like if you submit a Dodonpachi run, it's not going to be broken up upon ship type. So that's an issue.
Yeah,
and then another issue is that they don't want people just randomly showing up and posting their scores, as I learned. So that's not, I can't really say that's the way to go. That's not what they want you to be doing. And so the other one was Restart Syndrome. And I think Restart Syndrome is a solid one. It's the most solid. But the reason why I wanted to create a separate one rather than just using Restart Syndrome is, for one, Restart Syndrome doesn't have video requirements, right? It's kind of like the farm where you don't have to do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more open in that regard.
Yeah. And also, I just kind of wanted to start something where we're moving forward with kind of higher proof standards, better proof standards. So basically a lot of legacy scores we're not going to be accepting unless they have video evidence with them. And so that would be kind of like an issue there. So any other things I should mention about the leaderboard?
I feel like that kind of stuff is always going to be, it's always going to take time, and it's going to take like a lot of pushing it to people.
Marketing.
Whenever we see people like in the Discord, like post new scores, like, hell yeah, you should check out our leaderboard and like try and post it up there and, compare your scores and stuff like that. And just like getting it in people's brains so they will be more encouraged to interact with it as like a passive activity instead of something they have to be like actively thinking about every time that they play.
Yeah, and the concern with people just posting screenshots is an issue. Yes, you can sort of like trust people and stuff, but when we get into kind of like the murky waters Plasmo was talking about earlier, where we're looking at, is this a world record score? Is this not a world record score? Plasmo has magazines and JHA, which seem to have pretty solid verification standards. Did the magazines have verification, or Plasmo, or didn't you kind of mention that some of them may have had some BS scores or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very early magazine, the Mike and Basic, basically from was 1984 to 1998 or something. They don't have really very high verification standards, but when you look at Gamist and then Arcadia magazine and then JHA, they probably have the highest verification standards you can find. You basically can only play your credit in a public setting, in a public arcade, and have a referee. So it would be pretty impossible to cheat under these circumstances. And of course, the Shmup Open Leaderboard can't go as far, so we can, in parentheses, only have video proof, which is more than enough, I think.
Yes, and I actually forgot to mention this aspect of it as well when it comes to JHA. So an issue with JHA, though, that definitely affected how Dodonpachi ended up being played and stuff, is that they can't really do category splits and things like that because they don't have video to look at and see what category does this run belong to. So in Dodonpachi, for example, there's the famous glitcho exploit or whatever glitch where you can do some pretty silly stuff and get way higher scores than you would be able to otherwise. And this caused a lot of concern within Dodonpachi players in Japan because in JHA they can't split the category of glitch and no glitch. But on the open leaderboard, because we have video where we can reference, okay, what happened during the run, we can create separate scoring categories, which I think is a huge deal, a really big deal. So that's another part of the open leaderboard that I wanted to definitely go over too, is that's a huge benefit to being able to do this video standard is we're able to tell what runs are going what categories and stuff like that.
Yeah, it helps that we have a very active community of people who watch runs all the time. Like there's always like a Hatuji stream that gets promoted by Gus in like the relevant channel whenever it happened, and he's always watching them. And there's always other people just like camping out watching them. I know I probably hang out in Shmup streams all the time, and like pretty much any time there's one live and I know about it, I'm probably watching it or at least lurking. So there's a lot of people like checking the stuff out so they can verify what kind of stuff happens and like what ship is being used or whether or not it's glitchless, all that good stuff. So it's one of those things that everyone can sort of be involved in a passive way.
Yeah, and I even remember games outside of just Dodonpachi. This isn't as much of a thing now because of the recent M2 port, but I remember Plaz and I having a discussion about Esperade and the milking in that, and if it would be possible to create a separate scoring category without milking. And so, like, a lot of hypothetical situations like that could come about with different games and having different scoring categories. So that's another thing I'm really excited about the leaderboard for.
Yeah, we could finally have a Dogyun leaderboard that doesn't use the points glitch that exists throughout like 8 of the boss fights because of all the safe spots.
Right, or even Pink Suites, right, Plasmo? Isn't there some kind of like crazy life exploit in Pink Suites, right?
Exactly, it's basically the same. When you just only look at the ranking at the end of the game, you cannot tell how the run was played. Did it use some sort of glitch or was it played normally? And you basically need a video proof to tell if the player has used infinite lives in this game or triggered glitcho how many times in Dodonpachi and stuff like that. So with a video proof, we can have way more different categories, especially when it comes to glitches and stuff. But also in some games, the ending screen will not tell you which character you have used, which ship you have used. And for those, you also need video proof, basically, then. And JHA in Japan, they can basically only have one single category for those, and we can have more.
Yes.
And you know what? in regards to all these new categories that we could make up, we could actually invent like a speedrun race category for all the games with counter stops, because the counter stop means your score doesn't matter anymore, but how quickly can you get the counter stop?
That's actually a really good point.
Maybe you can get it in 10 minutes. Maybe you can get it in 9 minutes and 59 seconds.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's a good point.
That's the future, man. Counter stop races. DFK 1.0 will live again.
Yeah, again, though, like you mentioned, like a lot of different creative sort of stuff can be done. And also, we're kind of moving into a new territory with Shmups moving forward, where we're going to start having like different versions. Like you can kind of see this with the indie Shmups, where Blue Revolver 1.0 and then Blue Revolver 1 point something or other and stuff like that. And so, again, having the videos.
Truxton on the Genesis.
Right, exactly. Just having a little bit more information at our hands will really help with separating out runs from each other and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other thoughts before we close out the episode?
Yeah, one more thing actually. So when it comes to the leaderboards and the scores, when we start from scratch, it's a good thing on the one hand. But on the other thing, people are playing shmups, have been playing shmups for the past 20 years at least, right? And when you look at the shmups forums, you have so many scores, and at least in my opinion, it would be a good idea to include those scores and maybe just mark them as a legacy and maybe make them invisible. And if you click on them, only then they become visible, stuff like that. I have to address this as a historian, especially because I think the future should definitely have video requirement. But it would be a shame to lose out on 20 years of playing shmups, right? And the community, basically all the people who've been in the community for much longer than this have played under different verification standards, and the time was just a different one. And I'm not saying that we should continue with this, lack of any verification standard. I think it's definitely the right way to choose video proof. But I also think that we shouldn't lose out on the 20 years of history we can look back to already. But that's just my personal opinion. I know, Mark, you probably have a different take on this, but I find it sad to lose those scores from the forum, because those were some good days we had.
So, Plasmo, what's funny is we've had this conversation, I think, a number of times, and I remember the last time we had this conversation, the points were flipped, where basically I was saying we should keep the legacy scores and you were thinking that we should not have the legacy scores. So
yeah, but you wanted to keep the legacy scores in particular that only had video proof, but I'm talking about any score posted on the Shmups forum, and this would also give us a head start, because you've said, and it's, I think, very justified, that the beginnings will be very slow. It will be empty leaderboards, and if we just start with the Shmups forum scores, maybe, as I said, just have them invisible maybe first, because some don't. Well, most of them don't have video proof, actually. We could just build up on this.
Yeah, so I'm totally open to that idea. This is something we've definitely gone back and forth. I guess I can go over, for the sake of the podcast, like the pros and cons that we've discussed with doing this. So the pro of including the legacy scores that I mentioned is, like Plasmo said, these are scores that were achieved prior to any sort of video standard being required. And there are people who have legitimately achieved these scores, I'm sure. And so it would be a shame for them to lose these placements and stuff like that, or have to redo them. Another thing that including the legacy scores benefits is that it adds more content, I guess, for lack of a better word, to the leaderboard. It adds more data to it, basically. So when someone's coming to the leaderboard, it's not one run and the top run is like, a 150 mil Dodonpachi run or something like that, where it'll have a bit more of a legacy of players and things like that to go into. I remember when we had this discussion, the negative of that is just that you can discourage some new players possibly when it comes to, like, because the newer players are playing at a higher standard than the older players, and when it comes to having to verify their runs with videos and things like that. For example, let's say, I put something like Pazzy's score on there, the one that doesn't have video, and I have no idea how he achieved that score or not. So stuff like that could be a little bit tricky. Or if you have just a kind of like a Sraken scores where people weren't ever quite sure if they were legit or not legit, and so
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that. It's a huge issue for sure. In my vision, it would be to mark those scores as unverified, and basically the user of the leaderboards then have to decide for themselves just if they want to take those scores as real or not. If they have a huge unverified mark to them, you have to decide for yourself, basically.
yeah.
But it's still, if you look at games like Dodonpachi and Battle Garegga, we have literally hundreds of scores on the forum,
Yep.
and it looks so nice, and it's basically what we have achieved as a community over the past 2 decades at least. And now losing all that, it's a shame, really. And let's say, of course, when you don't have any video verification standards, you always have some cheaters. But maybe when you have 100 players, 1 or 2 are cheated. And I would be willing to have those cheated scores. We will never find out if they're cheated anyway. If we can also, on the other hand, have those 98 scores that are real.
One thing that does come to mind, just thinking again of like the Shrike whatever score or something like that, it is kind of a little bit difficult in that, like you said, there really is no way to ever prove or disprove if the run is legit or not. Like, there's no way. You don't know.
Right.
So
we can just say this much. We can just say, well, we don't know if this score is real. This guy has told us it is real 10 years ago, but we don't know, and so it is unverified. We will list it here, but please be careful. Maybe it's not real. Yeah, but maybe that's just speaking maybe that's just the historian speaking out of me that I want to include these scores as well. On the topic of Sigriken in particular, I've talked to him quite a couple of times the past month, and I think opinion is that we should not include those scores, and he would be fine not having those included, at least those that don't have video proofs, because he has some video proof as well, but other scores are not backed up. So if the player himself, and he's still around, if he says, well, I'm fine, don't include my scores, it's good, we can just get rid of those.
yeah, so this is just kind of like breaking news to me, because I remember having this discussion before where we came to the conclusion that we should not include the legacy scores, but I do see the merit of having them, and I remember explaining my thoughts on why it was good to include them as well. So, in that case, it will not be launching on August 1st, but when it does launch, it will have a lot of scores on it, so
A double announcement.
a double announcement here. But yes, yeah, I agree, Plasmo. Yeah, we've talked about this, and I think having the legacy scores, for me, the main one is that they fill out the leaderboard. I think that's really, you know what I mean? Because even myself, like when I get, like I want Airpo's score, he has video though, but like in my Dononpachi score, right? It would be kind of sad when I beat Airpo's score and post it, and it's just like my score on an empty leaderboard, and there's like no other scores there. So yeah, I definitely do see the the merit of including these legacy scores. I definitely think that we should mark them as something, as like legacy, or, you know, they need to have like an asterisk, like Barry Bonds, you know, they need something on there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think it is good to include those legacy scores. I did find a way to rip them off the farm fairly efficiently, so yeah, I'll be working on on that. So I guess I won't be launching on August 1st, but when it does launch, it'll have a lot of scores on there.
Yeah, hit Duke Nukem. It'll be done when it's done.
It will add a lot of legitimacy as well, I think, to the leaderboards, because that's basically, at least how I see it, it's a leaderboard of our community, basically of the English-speaking community. And of course, when Chinese, Korean, Japanese players from all over the world want to join as well, and some have joined the Shmups forum too, they can do so. But mostly, it's probably the English-speaking Shmups community. And if we have this new leaderboard, but then don't have any of our achievements, that would be just a shame. So I think it would be adding a lot to the legitimacy, and people could accept it also easier to then submit their new scores.
Yeah, I think so.
Because they see, well, I'm submitting scores to leaderboards that reach back 20 years. And that's also a cool thing to do always, right?
Since I have you in a new state of mind, I'll push one more on you to see if maybe you'll change your mind on this. But what do you think about merging the video index then? Because we have these legacy scores, maybe we should merge in the video index and make it one ultimate leaderboard where you have the video index and the legacy scores and the new scores?
Yeah, we had this discussion also,
Yes.
right? So my take on this was that I would be against it, and the reason is that, as I said, I see this new leaderboard and the Shmups forum. Basically, I see the new leaderboard as an extension, a better version of the Shmups forum, and so as a mirror of the English-speaking community. And the video index has scores from all over the world and replays from people we've never even heard about, and maybe they don't want to have their scores included. Maybe they don't even want to have their replays uploaded to YouTube, and they would rather want to have them taken down, but they're up there for whatever reason. And
because we say so.
What
That's
I want
why.
to see is like a minimum involvement in the community. If it's been done 10 years ago or now, it doesn't really matter to me, but you have to show some commitment and show some involvement with the community, talk to the players, and submit your score yourself, not have other people submitting your scores. So when you would transfer the Shmups forum scores to the new leaderboard, of course, the players themselves wouldn't do that, but at one point in time, they have submitted their scores to the Shmups forum community, to the English-speaking community, and so this is just the continuation of it. But some random Japanese player we've never heard about, he never submitted his score to the Shmups forum. He would never submit it to the new leaderboards. So why add
I
it?
see.
This is my take.
Okay, we'll stick with that then for now, keeping the video index separate. Maybe someday the leaderboard becomes so popular that the video index will sort of migrate its way in there on its own.
I can see why you want to do that, because you want to have this international definitive world rankings for shooting games. And this is a very natural thing to want, right? And it's the same in the speedrun community. You have one leaderboard, and of course you have the world record score as the first place, and then you have all the other scores on there as well. I don't think it's that easy to do within the Shmups community, because it has such a diverse history, and we've pretty much have very separate communities, not only in Japan and the English-speaking community, but you also have China who have their own leaderboards basically, and they don't list scores by English players, they don't list scores of Japanese players. They have completely separate leaderboards. Same for Korea. And I think at one point we can maybe entertain this idea of having this worldwide rankings, but I think it's too early as of now. I think we have to grow as a community first and show that we are stronger and put out better scores, so the Japanese players will try to submit their scores to our community as well. But as of now, the Japanese community is just so much stronger, and we cannot really have this international worldwide leaderboard. They would have to do it. If Japan is going to do that, we could we could try to get on there, but not the other way around, I think.
My hope is that as arcade fades and fades and fades, which it will, JHA's methods are just not going to work anymore. And those players are going to need to find some way to track their scores and compete, right? And so if we have this nice and established and they look on, they're aware of it, then they're like, okay, well, our score's got to go somewhere now. And so they start going on the open leaderboard. Then it's like, okay, now the open leaderboard's becoming more international. Now we're getting world record, Japanese record holders submitting on here. Then maybe at that point it's like, okay, maybe we can start sliding in the video index just in there because we've gotten that international at this point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So this will be the turning point, basically, when arcades are fully dead, even in Japan, which of course will happen eventually. Then
Might happen quicker than we like.
Yeah.
Plan B. Yeah, I don't like it to be that way. I love arcades myself a lot, but it's probably inevitable anyway. So at this point, and I agree wholeheartedly with you here, that they will then have to probably use our leaderboards. So this will be the turning point. I think as of now it's too early, but at one point it will happen.
Yeah, and so another thing, since we're doing these legacy scores, I think it also, maybe I should put together a little bit of a group of people who are willing to help me out rating the legacy scores and making it into a format that's really easy to import into the leaderboards and stuff like that. Because I actually did do this. I don't know if you know this, Plasmo, but with a few pages, I actually went through and rated all the Dodonpachi scores. I think Moglar did all the Ketsui scores. And then we made the page, and then we discussed it, and you're like, well, maybe we shouldn't include the legacy scores. And then we had that whole discussion. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so we're like, okay, forget it. I actually kept them, though, so I still have those pages, so I can put those back up there. But
yeah, getting all those scores from the forum definitely sounds like slave labor. Someone has to do it.
It is slave labor, but it's actually for the people from 2 years ago who said, oh, it's impossible. It's not that impossible. Like, I've gotten a good amount of them. I found a way to do it that's pretty quick, so.
It's one of those things that I would describe it as not impossible, but probably not very exciting.
Right, exactly.
Like, I don't think you could do that for like 9 hours and be like, yeah, like after 30 minutes, you'd probably be like, I'd like to be doing anything else right now.
So the thing is that I know what it's like to do it for 9 hours because that's what the video index was like. It was just typing out those numbers for hours and hours and hours, so.
Man, opening up the wiki for like the first time and like trying to make sure it all worked was like a nightmare. It was actually like a huge headache for a while. I had installed it on my web space, but I had to get my server administrator to like look into the server, which took like a week or two in order to get the things that needed to be configured in the back end for it to work properly. And then I had to make sure that I had all this other stuff set up and put together, and then it was such a mess. I don't blame people for not wanting to do it because sometimes it's such a pain in the ass.
But we have done it. The overhead is complete, so people, help us out.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Any other thoughts before we head this out?
Can I give some shout outs real quick?
Go ahead.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Akko for all the work that he's been doing on the wiki. Like I said, the Kingdom Grand Prix page is amazing. It's probably one of the best pages out there. I also want to give a shout out to Yukari Time. She's been working on the Helsinker page, and that's probably like the only place to get accurate Helsinker information right now. And she's been like adding to it in little bits and pieces over time. And it's really starting to look like a big compendium of information that even the game doesn't tell you about. Of course, big ups to Sailor Mercury for her work on the Ketsui page and putting together like diagrams for like the stage 3 boss destruction that you have to do to get the extend there. Big shouts to Olafante for helping us find information about these games, like really digging into the code. Soft Drink has been a great supporter of the wiki and has done a fair amount of work as well. Obviously, Plasmo has done a ton of work. The Hall of Records is looking great, and I'm really excited to see this stuff grow a little bit more. Juju's also been helping out with the DOJ page. Jamers has been handing out lots of information for everybody. there's just been like Erpo did the DFK 1.5 page, and that looks great. It's super detailed. It's probably also one of the only places you can find actually accurate DFK information, and like all of it, or most of it at least. And Amuser, who's joined recently and has been helping fill out the index of pages specifically for the games that are going to be featured at Calice Cup, which is also happening on August 1st. We're going to be trying to set up some pages for as many of those games as possible before August 1st. So that way, when you do decide to enter Calice Cup, you can look at the wiki page and know how to play the game, and then just instantly start trying to go for scores and go for routes and stuff like that. So please consider checking out shmups.wiki and all the other things that the community is doing. Go hang out in people's Twitch streams. Go say hi. Tell them they're doing a great job. Encourage people when they're getting into new games, even if their score is not great. Tell them that they did a great job, and get people to play these games more and be more involved in the community, because more like a better, stronger community of people who are all willing to help each other can only bring great things to the future of the community and the future of the developers who are involved in the community, who are basically taking up the torch of all of the dead companies that don't exist anymore and continuing their legacies onward. So play more shmups and support all the projects that all your friends are doing.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that for sure. Any other closing thoughts, Plas, perhaps?
I concur.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I feel like I have taken possession of Charlene, and she's like channeling my thoughts.
Play shmup, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. See ya.
Have a good one.
See ya.